Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this IATI State of the Data Community Dialogue consultation. So, as always, we're just waiting for people to arrive or finish their meetings or other things. So, do bear with us for a couple of minutes whilst our attendance increases. In the meantime, you should be able to see the chat in Zoom. And we would like you just to think what words come to your mind when you think of subnational location. Just to pass the few minutes whilst we wait. Any words for everybody in the room with us this afternoon, this morning, this evening. What comes to your mind when you think of subnational location? And I'll pause there, and we'll wait for others to join. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephen Flower from the IATI Secretariat, and we have here on Zoom several functions to welcome you. We would ask people to mute your microphone to start with, and by default. If you want to, and you can, please show yourself on video. Feel free to comment in the chat box, as we've asked what comes to mind about subnational location. If you can, please rename yourself in the chat. That would really help. And a great thing that we do on these calls, we've got live interpretation to French and to Spanish. So in your controls in Zoom, you should see the interpretation button to be able to listen in French and Spanish as well as the English. And a reminder to everyone speaking to speak nice and slowly to help our wonderful translators, interpreters as well. Thank you. So first of all, we'll pass to Cody from UNDP, the Policy and Governance Specialist, just to give some context about the state of the data program and help us along the way. So over to you, Cody, and I'll change over to that slide. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephen. Hello, welcome, colleagues. It's great to see many familiar people joining. My name is Cody Wallace. I'm the Policy and Governance Specialist for the IATI Secretariat, where I lead our data quality policy work. Our Executive Director, Yemiyash Worky, was unable to join this morning, but on the IATI Secretariat's behalf, a warm welcome to everybody and to those who are new to IATI as well. So just before we begin, as Stephen mentioned, to kind of situate this state of the data program in a broader context, really the year for 2026 is an important moment for IATI as we've just launched our new 5-year strategic plan. And at the heart of that is really a clear focus on strengthening the use of development and humanitarian data. So it really informs better decisions and accountability. And as some of you may know, today more than 1,800 organizations publish development and humanitarian data to the IATI standard, which is really a major collective achievement. But we know the data only delivers value when it's actually used. So that's why we launched IATI's State of the Data series last year. And this State of the Data program is about taking more of a focused look at specific parts of the IATI data to help us understand what is being published, what users find valuable, and where data quality can be improved to support real-world use cases. So as you can see on the slide here, over the past 6 months, the State of the Data series has really become a focused program of learning and engagement. In 2025, we had delivered 3 analytical briefings, which were supported by community dialogues and follow-up work. And the first one looked at document links. From this analysis, we found more than 500,000 documents are now linked through the IATI standard, which we know can provide that vital context on funding, delivery, and even results. And another point of our analysis looked at organization references in the data. We identified nearly 17,000 organizations referenced across IATI activities. And really, this information is essential for coordination and for following resource flows that through complex delivery networks. Our third analysis focused on timeliness, where we discovered that 12 organizations had achieved weekly publishing rates, which represent around 11% of all activities. And we know timely information, especially in crucial humanitarian crisis contexts and development planning for the future, timeliness is essential. So as you can see through the State of the Data series, we really are uncovering that gold mine of untapped information, and it's really opening up data not accessible elsewhere in the development and humanitarian ecosystem. So in 2026, we really want to take this, we want to build on this momentum, and we'll plan to continue the State of the Data work as a core part of IATI's offer to our community. So for today, welcome to this session on subnational location data. I think this discussion really centers on a simple question, right? It's about where is development and humanitarian cooperation actually happening? And I think we're beginning to understand, right, that through the standard offers avenues for organizations to publish location data beyond just the country and recipient country level, right? This includes administrative areas, named places, and even exact coordinates. So we know that many organizations are already publishing subnational location data, but we know it's published in different ways and sometimes not at all. So that's why we also wanted to hear from you during this meeting, why we want to understand how this data is being used across different system and contexts, and what works in practice, what doesn't, what would make it more useful, not just for IATI, but across the wider development and humanitarian data ecosystem. So before we get started, just to sincerely say thank you to today's speakers for joining us from the community, and we're really all looking forward to hearing how other data initiatives, especially, are publishing and using location data. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Stephen and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you for the introduction, and welcome to colleagues who've just joined us. Recap today's call. We'll talk very briefly about IATI and subnational location. But what we wanted to do today was also hear from some initiatives that are doing some great things around subnational location. Think about that from a more holistic point of view, and then further down the line later on in the subsequent weeks, we can think about how does IATI work or not work for us in those contexts. So just a reminder as well, we have live interpretation for people into French and Spanish. And in your Zoom controls, you should be able to see the interpretation button to select the French or Spanish channels. So hopefully that's helpful to people. So that's our agenda. I'm going to talk very briefly, first of all, about IATI and subnational locations at the high level, just to give us some context. We know in the IATI standard there is this part of the IATI standard called location. And we know that that's defined to help organizations publish information about the places or the areas that the activity might be delivered in, or the people involved in the activity might be in. So that's always been in the IATI standard. And for those familiar with the IATI XML and all those things, it's quite a big piece. There's lots of data in there, or lots of data that can possibly be in there. So it's always been in IATI and always been available. And we took a brief look at the numbers first of all, of who is using it and how many. So there are over 600,000 locations currently published in around 240,000 activities. So that seems quite a lot. And around 461 organizations that publish IATI data are publishing that information about locations. And within those 600,000 locations, 540,000 have a point, which is something important for us to talk about later on. But not that says that not all the locations are single points. They might be places or areas as well. So that's what that's the headlines first of all about IATI, and we can see this if we look on dportal, for example. In dportal that shows all the IATI data, we can see these heat maps of how many of the activities and where they are and where those points are, for example. And around 21%, as we saw, of activities have this location. So that's just one way that we can appreciate the location data of IATI. That gets quite interesting when you look at somewhere like Uganda, for example, when you use dportal to look into it. And here is a heat map of Uganda, and we can see one on the capital city and one on Uganda. And if you begin to filter that by different publishers, it it's a strange thing. I'm just going to go back and forth. So we see different heat maps at different places, and it strikes us that there seems to be a lot of focus on the capital city and then also the center of the country. And that's something we want to look at later on with the community about the usage of this. But right now, that doesn't seem really, really useful and something for us to look at later, look at together around that. So yeah, interesting stuff. Elsewhere, organizations like the African Development Bank and their portal that uses their own IATI data called Map Africa, they do a lot of work to add these locations to their projects. So here we are looking again at Uganda, and we can see perhaps a more spread of the points or the locations of their projects. And I was taking a look at one such project, an education project, and again, lots of spreads across Uganda on one single project. And that's really interesting. When you begin to look at the actual data that the African Development Bank include in their IATI projects, it's not just the points that they're publishing, it's the names and the identifiers of the districts, for example. And this was really, really interesting for us about not just talking about a single place within the country, but a single area. And is that useful to people? Is it useful to know that this project is in these district or that area of that place? That's Uganda. I did look. There are 136 districts in Uganda, so it might be really useful to know that a project is at a sub-selection of those projects, those districts in Uganda. And of course, we're all from different parts of the world. And so whether we're thinking about the divisions of Bangladesh or the departments for Spanish speakers of Colombia, for example, they could be really interesting to associate the data that we use with IATI with these areas. And then perhaps more of a challenge is the Sahel region that spans different parts of Northern Africa, for example. How do we want to start to associate our IATI data with these subnational locations? I think is an interesting challenge and discussion for us to have. So thinking about this, our purpose of the next of today and the next few weeks is really to get into that detail of, well, what data is useful to you as you use IATI data or other data around subnational location. If you do, how do you collect that information? Do you use map software, or do you just have a list of those districts, for example? And then how do you use it? Do you have software or tools, or do you or more classic spreadsheets, for example, or what off the shelf tools like Tableau? We have a screenshot from our colleagues in the Netherlands here. Start to look at this subnational location. So, is it useful? What data is useful to you? How and if do you collect this subnational location data, and then how do you use it? And to know after this call, because we're keen to hear from people in as many different ways, we'll send a very short survey out, and we'd really, really appreciate if you can tell us answer these questions, or tell us about projects that are interesting to you, because this is the point we want to understand. And that was a very, very poor joke. Okay, today's guest, we're really lucky that we've got two community to projects amongst our community that come here to share their work and how they would look at subnational location related somewhat to IATI. And first, we're joined by Pecha formerly from the IATI community. We're most welcome, Pecha, to join us today. And she's representing the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team and the work that they do. So we're really looking forward to understanding that from, again, data collection about subnational geography and locations. And secondly, we've got Maya, Alison, and Johannes from the MapMe community, who have lately been really looking into the IATI standard and the location, and trying to and may have proposals and ideas about how that can become more practical and useful to us. So really looking forward to that. So that's it from me. I'm going to stop screen sharing now and then pass over to Pecha, and we're going to hear about the humanitarian OpenStreetMap. And welcome back, Pecha. Thank you.
Great. Hope you can see my screen. It's just checking it's all working. Yeah,
yes,
perfect.
Lovely.
Great. Hi everyone, happy to join you all today, and to be back in IATI world. I'll try and take less than 10 minutes to tell you more about humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, the work we do, and why location is so important. So not going to go in details of the standard, but really in this discussion, thinking about open data and thinking about location and the impact that it has. And very open to questions. So I'm part of HOTIA. I used to work in IATI. I think just personally very passionate about the role of open data and crowdsourced data. So I think there's a lot of links between HOTDAS and IATI in that context. So for those of you who haven't heard, I'll just give you a bit of context of what we do as an organization. What is OpenStreetMap when we speak in the context of location? So as a team, we started 15 years ago, and we are an international team dedicated to humanitarian action and community development through open mapping. That's kind of in one sentence, which covers a lot of other parts. The things that you see here, which I think are critical in the work that we do, is that the data is local and it's community sourced. So this data is generated locally. We do have a lot of volunteers, and the data is used for decision making. And I'll give you some examples of that work. So we speak about location, right? And we speak about maps. So we've seen already actually in Stephen's examples, I think African Development Bank's visualization uses OpenStreetMap. So what is OpenStreetMap? I'm sure on a daily basis, you all use some sort of maps. So OpenStreetMap, as you can see on the slide, is free, open, it's a map. Anyone can contribute, anyone can edit. Think of it as the Wikipedia of maps, which is really critical when we speak of the context also where, a lot of the IATI projects and the locations are happening. There are a lot of gaps in that map data. And one of the big focus of the work of HOT and OpenStreetMap is really to generate that data through a lot of volunteers. Here you see a map of kind of the regional focus, a lot of the projects, and I'll give you some examples that we focus on. OpenStreetMap have been there for over 20 years, but the specific projects and work that we do as an organization, we're around 70 people, but rely on a lot of partners and volunteers to be able to generate the maps. And I'll tell you more about what we mean when we speak about maps. And it happens in Asia Pacific, Eastern Southern Africa, Western Northern Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. A bit about, and I'll welcome questions as well, is what is the role? What is the impact? And I think maybe that's a question when you think of analyzing IATI data as well, and similar to the location and OpenStreetMap, is making sure that community needs are addressed, whether that's connecting health centers, whether that's schools, through mapping. If you don't have the location, you don't know where you need to go to. That people can add that knowledge so you can contribute and access the data as well. And that data is available. So you can also, pull OpenStreetMap data for visualization, for analysis as well. So connecting it to maybe some kind of practical examples, and in this way you can think of, IATI and maybe the projects that are happening. Some are a bit older, but just giving you examples of the context in which location and map data is really critical, and some work that has happened. So I'll just use 2 or 3 examples, and then I'll pause to hear more from you. So we are all aware, nearly 3 years ago, the earthquake that happened in Turkey and Syria. In that case, HOT mobilized a lot of volunteers that mapped nearly 2 million buildings, right? So when we speak about location here, it's in areas where there were no maps available. So through the volunteers and mapping, then the maps were basically used by MSF and other organizations directly on the ground. Another way that location data and map data is also accessed, and I know that's also the case for IATI, is like humanitarian data exchange, so humanitarians go in that. And I think what I was thinking is also referencing, IATI data and combining data sets. It's maybe one area to think about specifically for like a country and looking at the OpenStreetMap data or the subnational locations of projects in that country. Other examples where we really see that use of locally generated map data is places where like disinformation is lacking. So for instance, in Liberia and Sierra Leone, we've worked specifically with communities to map and to generate that data in informal settlements. What that means is that then you're able to have better decisions working with local governments, which I know with IATI is also as well like a use case of who is the user of the data. So if you have like project information, but you also have the locally generated data specifically for that region, that would also be used. And another use case, again, of like highlighting importance of the generation of map data is this case, focusing on census in Zambia, right? So when, for instance, census and data collection happen, this is another case where together with a lot of volunteers using one of our tools, mapping happened to buildings. So a lot of examples here that I use is, if you think of a subnational area, the level of mapping that happens, it's, the buildings, the roads, so information that would then be used for navigation and for knowing how to reach people. But in this case was basically enabling that generation of the census data. So there are different examples, which I think is maybe the case as well with activities in IATI, the use cases of it. But what I wanted to point out is more maybe the combining first open data that's locally sourced. And the main difference with what HOT is doing is that the data is generated locally. So a lot of the information that you might not be able to access in different sources. And I've just shared some links which I can share after the sessions. But yeah, I'm happy to not take more time so we can go into discussion and questions.
Thank you, Petra. That's really interesting and really helpful, particularly around people creating data, creating this very, as you suggest, as you show, very subnational location data, and then the idea of combining that with other data sets. For example, as you suggest, linking it to IATI activities is really fascinating. Have you had any examples as well from the community of where where volunteers have mapped data and then combined it with others to get wider insights, for example? And then if we do have questions or anything in the chat, we can keep an eye on that whilst we ready our next presentation.
So I don't know examples of combination maybe with IATI data, but yes, a lot of the map data is combined, for instance, as I mentioned, census data, directly population data. Like I know with projects when we're talking about working with local governments related to like schools and assessment, so additional layers for some of our projects. So yeah, I think there are a lot, and often with open data, I don't know all the examples, but it depends on the context in which you basically layer. So you have like roads and buildings, and you combined with other more local data sets.
Thank you, Petra. And I think when we've taken that look at IATI data, it does often seem people are linking to either a point in the map or the name of a district, and there's no, as yet what we've seen, real demonstrated link between a drawing on a map of a building or an area as you've shown as well. So I think that's something to explore about how if people are creating this data and we can connect it, would be really valuable to others. So again, we'd encourage people to feedback and tell us if and how that would be useful, I think. Thank you, though, and welcome back. Have we any questions, Simon, or anything in chat, or shall we ask our other team to share slides, and then we'll see how much time we have left?
We've got no questions in chat and no hands up, so I can move on. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Petra. And we will share the slides and the links as well. Thank you. So over to Alison first of all, who will talk to us about the Map Minim initiative, and then colleagues Maya and Johannes will join too. Over to you, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Can you see my screen? Just make sure it's okay with the sharing.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Great. So hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all today. So I'm here with my colleagues, Maya and Johannes from the KfW. And so we are here to briefly present what is the MAP initiative, and then we will jump directly to the topic of today, which is project location and how we address it at our level. So the MAP initiative was supported by, it's an initiative that is supported by 4 development organizations, which are AFD, so the French Development Agency, the KfW, the GIZ, and IRD. So the idea of this community is really to try to connect people and try to foster synergies and also jointly develop tools and methodologies in order to support project planning, monitoring, and evaluation through Earth observation and GIS. So basically within this initiative, there are different components. The first one is the community. So as a community, we are meeting once a month, and we really try. So we are the 4 organization, but we are also inviting other organizations from the development sector, and we really try to foster synergies. So see how the different organizations can work together. It's also a space where people can just share best practices and experiences, and all this with the aim of supporting really project planning, monitoring, and evaluation. In order to address climate change, poverty, and environmental degradation. And the idea of course, also behind us is also to advocate the added value of open source tools, data, and approaches. So part of this community, we are also providing some open source tools, tutorials, data sets, in order again to support geospatial data in development, monitoring, planning, and evaluation. So if you visit our website, you will see some of those resources. So basically the MAP initiative is just that it's not that we are a team working directly for this initiative, but it's each GIS specialist from every organization is there to collaborate and try to share tools with other organizations. So that's a bit how we try to work together. So these resources are really there to help practitioners and researchers to apply GIS and Earth observation in their daily work. And then a third aspect of this MAP initiative is really projects that are where different organizations are collaborating together. So if we have, for example, a project in Madagascar where AFD, the KfW, and RRD are working together to work on the protected areas. There, we have another project, monitoring and evaluating land conservation projects in Latin America and Africa. And then we have a third project that was just launched a few months ago, and which is the topic of today, which is the project location data model workshops. So basically this the idea of launching some workshops amongst our community came from an initiative from the KfW that just analyzed that there are no really binding standards or widely adopted tools around project location. There is very little publicly available information on that, and also really limited institutional capacities with GIS technologies. So it makes it really difficult to analyze development investments, especially, and also try to be transparent and coordinate across the different organizations. So from that, we decided to create a first workshop with development organizations that were interested and that were already collecting project location, but also organizations that would like to implement some workflows to collect this data. And so we organized 2 workshops, and during the first workshop, we invite the institutions that are already collecting data to just exchange a bit on, share the experience about how they collect data, what tools they use, what are the key challenges they're facing, and just share some best practices with other participants. And then we also work together in trying to co-design what would be the ideal workflow to improve data collection. So from the high level decision when you decide to collect data until the end when you just analyze and then showcase your data. So at the end of this first workshop, we came with some conclusions, and one of it was to try to work on the standardization of a data model, project data model. So that workshop was held last week, so it was really a recent one. And I will let my colleague Maya present a bit the outputs of this workshop and from where it's coming from.
Yeah,
so
thank you. Thank you so much, Alison. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So where we are coming from, we have found as a KfW, but also in the community of MAPME community of practice, that it's very important for us as a financing institutions, but also for donors, our partners, implementing agencies, and the people that are benefiting from our interventions, to get more information about what is happening at the project locations. And I mean, ideally, if I go back to Petya's presentation, we would make use of those buildings that were cartographed by the Hot OSM project in Syria to see basically which funding institution would rehabilitate which building, and if we would have all the same, if we would have a possibility to coordinate our efforts well, then basically we would have much more impact and effectiveness among the different donors and implementing agencies. And this is basically what we're seeing. And but what we have found in the world, and still it is often the case, that when you talk about locations, you have this very simple definition of it being just a coordinate, an exact or approximate coordinate, and most of them, as were mentioned, as a points. And then they have different attributes. Yeah, and you can see here there are lots of coordinates that were collected without any data model. And then you have very different information about each location, sometimes even in different languages. And you have no way to get here a clear image out of this and to analyze this data properly. And then basically, in order to get to advance on this, most institutions took a first step. Alison, you can move to the next slide. Yeah, like what we can see here in this World Bank page, where basically all the project data is assigned to all the project locations in a uniform way. Yeah, so basically you have just most of it is a IATI data already, and this is just assigned to a coordinate. But so you know to which project with which different attributes this location belongs. but you don't know anything other than the coordinate about what is happening at the location. And so we took a next step from that. So we can go, So basically what you could see here, what we collected, which our ministry wanted, is a collection of all the sites of the protected areas that we are supporting globally. And here you can see that this is actually, these are polygons that are not administrative units, but they are basically taken from the IUCN repository. But in addition to these, we also collect distinct polygons and lines. And we have developed a data model that is as much as possible aligned to IATI and is making use of some data types that IATI offers, like, for example, the exactness, location activity status, location types, etc., to get really location specific metadata. You can go to the next slide. And then basically beyond one sector, beyond the protected areas, we plotted for some regions the locations of all the projects and all the sectors. And what is nice, what you can do now is if you look, for example, for scholarship program areas in this region here, then you can just find the locations where there are scholarship program areas, which would be really, really complicated and need much of effort to do this without the data model. You can continue. So basically, what do we think? Why do we think that collecting location data and especially collecting it in a standardized way is useful for everybody? We believe that is most importantly, of course, the populations in our partner countries benefit from more targeted, coordinated, and effective project interventions with better services and impact and more transparency and accountability. And then at the second level as intermediaries, we have the governments, implementing agency, NGOs who can compare locations with satellite imagery, crowdsourced data, and other baseline data, and do then ESG, climate risk, and impact analysis, and also coordinate the activities better and use this also for their reporting. And then last but not least, donors and financing institutions like us, we can also use this data then, especially if we are able to aggregate it in a uniform way to identify among ourselves and with our partner governments financing gaps and imbalances and make better strategic decisions. And last but not least in this is also to improve the overall monitoring effectiveness and meeting of the IATI reporting standards with regards to subnational reporting. But what is important for you to understand is that nobody will collect project location data mainly for IATI reporting. It needs to be a combination of use cases and benefits for everybody. And only then the institutions will be ready and able to engage in this, because it costs lots of effort. And because we feel, and our MapMe community of practice members feel that the efforts can be strongly reduced by using a data standard, we did this workshop that Alice mentioned last week. And we had one working group looking at administrative unit boundary repositories. And there are different open repositories with their advantages and disadvantages. And we will publish recommendations about what to use for which application. And then we had a second working group looking more at the activity-related project location attributes, especially using IATI, and comparing data models of 6 of our member institutions. And we found that we have really a basis for discussing a minimum viable project location data standard aligned with IATI. And this is basically what the participants voted on to create a working group within the mapping community of practice to develop a proposal for a IATI project location standard that we will feed into the IATI community with the support of the IATI Secretariat. And we hope that we can then really make the IATI reporting at subnational level more operational in this way. And we have also, KfW has developed a little tool, which is an open automatic project location data validation tool, which could then also be used for such a standard, however it will look like. And this is what my colleague Johannes will show you quickly.
First thing I wanted to show, because Maya mentioned it, was our collection of the protected areas. And I think this is especially interesting in this IATI group here, because it shows what could be possible if donors would be able to collect together, in a common standard. So what we can see in this dashboard is our protected areas portfolio. And it's not only KfW. KfW is the blue dots, but we also have GIZ, which are the red dots. And we have jointly financed areas that are these orange ones. And just as Maya mentioned, we don't only have the point locations, but also the polygons, which in the case of protected areas, of course, is very important. And also what Maya mentioned was that we use this data to basically derive insights. We don't use it for IATI reporting yet, but we use it for deriving insights, for example, these reporting indicators that we need for the ministry, right? So how much forest area is within these protected areas? What's the total area? What's the mangrove area? How many marine protected areas are there? And so on. All things that we formerly had to collect manually and had to ask each project, we can now collect using basically the project locations and a bunch of open data sets. And then the interesting part becomes then when we also analyze other open data sets, for example, threatened species or carbon storage, biomass and stuff like that. And when we use this data, not only, let's say, retrospectively for reporting, but then we can also start to use it, let's say, proactively to plan new projects. And as you guys also mentioned, like one thing that's interesting here is we can see our protected areas, but we could also plot all of the other protected areas. And here we see the financing gaps, well, at least from our very limited portfolio view with KfW and GIZ. But now if we also take into account, let's say, data like threatened species, for example, we could have a look whether we can identify areas that have a lot of threatened species and are currently not financed yet, right? Or areas that have very high biodiversity intactness and are not currently financed yet. Yeah. And I mean, these are now maps, but we can also, of course, quantify that and then basically derive statistics on supported and non-supported protected areas. What is the social conditions around them? What are the environmental conditions? And basically try to come to something more, let's say, or to derive another insight into the regions where we are active. So that's a potential. And as Maya mentioned, we have developed a standard and we have also open sourced it. So what you can see here is basically first the documentation of the standard. So we have all the definitions there, what we understand as a project location, what the model is. Then we have some data collection guidelines. Those are basically for our project partners who should collect this data and then submit it to us. So we explain them that there are different geometries, that how they should map it, what are the criteria to map the project locations, maximize transparency, and so on. But also avoiding risks, to not map people which could be exposed to risks if you get the exact locations, and how they can submit it, and so on. And so, I mean, from a technical point of view, we started to first use Excel because it's basically just the easiest way for a lot of people to collect locations, with the limitation that in Excel, of course, you can only use point locations because you can only collect X and Y coordinates. But maybe it's also good to show this here so you can see how the data model looks a little bit. I will not go into the details, but we are asking questions here. This is if people collect it in Excel, they can also collect it with other tools or in proper geospatial formats. So we have stuff like the location name, we have the location activity status, and here the IATI guys in the meeting should already recognize a lot of this stuff actually comes from IATI. Yeah. Activity description, then we have the location types. This was a huge effort led by Maya to basically derive like hundreds and hundreds of location types and extend this list of IATI. And I mean, this data model is published on the website, which I showed you. But we also wanted to go one step further, which is basically allowing people to validate the data before they submit it to us. Yeah. And so this is a little tool that we developed where you can upload a data set, Excel or GeoJSON. I will now upload an invalid one. Just downloads. And then basically what the tool will do is to check this data set and give me some validation results. So it's saying here in the first row, you have a location where you don't, where the date is missing, yeah, where the format is not really a date. And as you can see, it was basically, I think I opened this Excel and here I just did some dummy stuff. I just put something in here, which is not a date. So the idea of this is that our project partners, before they submit this information to us, they can first check it and it arrives in a better way and we don't need so much email ping pong. Yeah. And then, of course, you can also use this tool to basically verify whether the coordinates that were given in the Excel actually match, yeah, whether there is something. So, I mean, you can basically just use the base map and then click on the location, also see what is described here and try to confirm whether this location information is correct. And here you have basically all the attributes that you just saw in Excel. Yeah, and I think next steps will be to enable people to also use this tool for collection. So we are trying to implement a little tool here where you can then also search for addresses and basically use this tool to also create data if you're not using Excel. Yeah, but that's future stuff. And yeah, as said, all of this is open source. And yeah, we would be very happy if others would basically get in touch and we would develop something jointly, yeah, to share the results, but yeah, amongst many people. So that's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Alison, Maya, and Johannes. That's really, really interesting as well. A question that I have, if I can, as take the floor. We talk often with IATI about interoperability, so data sets working with each other. Back to your proposal that you agreed in the community of practice around a proposal about IATI, is the vision there that we need to adapt and change the location part of the IATI standard to enable that to be better, and or is it that people can link to it, as we talked with Petru as well, so we get that interoperability between different systems and different data sets, so that IATI can help people find this areas of protection and other things.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you see it working?
Stephen, yeah, this will be both. Yeah, I think we need first to get better standards for the data model, because and one problem is definitely the location types list that you have in IATI, which is military codes from the Second World War, somebody told me. And this is lacking lots of physical location types, and it's completely lacking immaterial location types. So this is what we are working on, but we want not only to basically impose the list that we made, that Johannes mentioned, but we want to work with all the interested organizations on really making a comprehensive list that is useful for everybody at a certain granularity level, which we have to agree on. Yeah. But we have lots of interest from experts, from the community, from the World Bank, from IFAT, from WFP, the other UN organizations. So I think this is a good mix to basically come up of technical people. Yeah, so we don't have official representatives. We don't have MOUs. We just have experts who want to solve a problem. And then basically the idea and the location types is not the only thing we're going to propose, but also to look at the other IATI elements and basically to create a set of minimum attributes that we recommend institutions to use uniformly, in a standardized way, and then everybody can collect in additional stuff that they are interested in. So we don't also want to force everybody into a corset. But to have a minimum set of identical data types to be able to coordinate our efforts. This would be fantastic, I think, and this would be what we want to propose. And then basically based on that, we will also have to look at which are the good formats, open formats to submit this data, what are tools we are recommending, etc., etc. But this then comes after the data model.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. The last question I have for both Hot and Mapme, very quickly, because we often talk in IATI about the community and the people who are here listening in, and we're running out of time. But how many people are involved in the Mapme community practice? And Petja also, how many people are mapping via Hot? Because I think this is the key bit for us as well. Is it's not just the IATI folk; it's also the other folk that we want to work with. So, just give me an idea of the numbers of people, the real people involved here. Thank you.
If I may start, just on Mapme, I think it's a bit completely different from Hot. So initially we were only 4 organizations, and we decided in June last year to open it to more organizations. So far. We are a bit more than 20 people joining the monthly calls. And for the workshop, we had organizations that were initially not part of the community, so they will now join the community, and we had around 30 people joining each workshop. So really interesting.
And I would like to add that you have always to think about who's involved in project location data collection in projects. And if I look only at KfW, then we have at least 100 consulting institutions and implementing agencies collecting project location data, and this is usually more than one person, and this is only KfW. So you have basically hundreds of people collecting this data.
Thank you. Great, thank you. And back to Petja. I think
I'll try to be brief because for us, Hot as an organization, we always say like a catalyst. We're 70 people working with hundreds of partners. But I can give you a number for like the individuals, like remote volunteers on one of our tools is like over 500,000. They're not active all the time, but it's a really big like community of people who, they don't engage on a daily basis, but are involved.
Thank you. I thought this would happen. We've come to the hour. We've been together for an hour. We had a few mishaps with Zoom and things, but thank you for everybody for staying with us. So we don't have that much time for open discussion, but I wanted to stress this call is a bit different to the state of the data calls we did last year. Last year, we did some research about IATI and then discussed it. Whereas here, we're changing it around. We wanted to have a discussion very early in the year and have more of these calls. So apologies that we can't open the floor directly today, but we wanted to do a survey out to people for their ideas and things that they've learned or know of elsewhere, and then have more focus calls as the next weeks go on. So then we can think, and with colleagues here today, what do we need to do around IATI with the IATI standard, or how do we work as clearly put out to us today with other initiatives.
We've got a couple of requests from both HOT, from Petja, and from Mapme, if you're looking for engagement from people, if they're interested and sharing their details. So please do take note of that.
And please, we'll send us a very short survey, and we would really appreciate any feedback, thoughts, ideas you have. And please consider this call this afternoon, this morning, this evening as the first discussion about the state of subnational location data. I'm not very good at these words, so let's leave it there. Thank you, everybody. I'll wave goodbye. Thank you, and very much great thanks to our presenters this afternoon. Thank you.